Hi, welcome back. Today I'll be doing some painting on this wall. I have great news. We got a washer dryer combo, which it came used. Here's my son doing some spackling on the wall where we took off some cabinets because we took the opportunity of getting a new appliance to rearrange some stuff in the kitchen too. And no more laundromat. I can now do laundry from start to finish in my own house. Granted, the dryer part does not dry clothing in the same way as a gas dryer, so it doesn't have so much air circulation that it makes stuff super fluffy. It is very good though, and compared to one of these that I used like a decade ago, this one actually works really well, except that some things like heavy duty fabrics like jean material, thicker fabrics will tend to get wrinkled. So I'm trying to brainstorm some ways of seeing how to make stuff come out better. But overall, it's been a great addition to the house. As some of you know from watching the channel, I've been slowly doing some home improvements. We moved into this 1928 building, which had very few alterations or things that were improved in it. So we had to gut renovate the kitchen. We had to peel off layers and layers of wallpaper, and you can see here that the wiring is external because whoever put this in did not get it into the wall. So the original wiring was just had maybe like one outlet per room. When I think about the implication of the repetition of the year 1928, which is not only the year my grandmother was born, but also the year that the building where she lived most of her life was constructed. It really makes me connect to the bigger cycles of time, multi generational traumas and triumphs, and the acknowledgement of my own history, my grandmother, and like her domestic duties, my mother's domestic duties, and the kind of complicated relationship between all of those things because both of these women like did not necessarily feel like it was like their calling or their destiny to take care of house and children. And there were like very pronounced things about like culturally where even for women who did want to do those things, or like having a career was very much expected in the like 70s, 80s. The point is that women were expected at this point in history and place to have careers, but also because the old kind of norms never died away, they were also expected to take care of everything domestic without the help of their husbands. And due to the multi generational nature of most Soviet households, it wasn't just the mom who was solely responsible. There was usually a grandmother or even an aunt who also took care of the house. And the culmination of this was the annual Women's Day, which celebrated women and which meant like flowers and candy and saying that I'm celebrating women, but beyond that, there was very little acknowledgement of how difficult it was to bring this kind of expectations of the modern working woman while also not letting go of any of the expectations of also being like a house servant. So, this is what I mean by things being like always very complicated in the home and in the taking care of the home that was kind of like palpable when I was growing up. And to make the coincidence of the year 1928 even stronger, it's notable that I accidentally mixed up a color of paint that is that blue, light bluish, like spa color, that was the same exact color that my grandmother had her kitchen painted um, during a renovation when I was a kid. So a lot of my formative years were spent with the backdrop of this color, this bluish color, that when I arrived at this color, like I said, quite incidentally for my own kitchen, because I had some like leftover paint. One was like white, one was that darker green. There was some tan or something. I just mixed them all up so I would have enough paint. I wouldn't have to go get a new bucket. You know, I was trying to be like frugal and environmentally conscious. And then when I started applying this color to the wall, I had this sense like, you know, when you have a scent that triggers a very strong memory that almost feels like you're there. I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with having this happen to them at least a couple of times. So, like when I saw this, it was a visual kind of manifestation of that, where this color that I was applying brought me to right back to my own childhood and to the way our kitchen was, my grandmother's kitchen, where I spent a lot of the time, and how much she cooked and cleaned in there. And a lot of the times there was like some butchering she had to do, like really raw ingredients, dirty vegetables, like dirty potatoes, stuff that was just hours ago, like touching, you know, growing in the ground, animals that were like alive that morning, all things that were purchased from the local, um, like the local, what is it? A bazaar is like a market? Yeah, that's it. So I just had this like visceral experience coupled with already knowing the like that the year of this building coincided with her year of birth and the building where she spent most of her life, like taking care of people, cooking, taking care of like her sick daughter, and then her sick husband, and having like her other daughter and myself like leave the country, and the kind of stress that would have put on her, and just having all of those memories flood back in with the presence of this like weird mixed together blue color. I thought that was kind of like a fun nod to um, my past and my upbringing. My grandmother had a huge stellium in the a sign of Cancer, which means that there was a lot of like domestic duty kind of interwoven into her life, whether or not she intended for her life to take those turns. She always ended up as a caregiver, as kind of like the glue that held the family together, doing all those like invisible things in the background with very little acknowledgement. And I also have like a lot of overlap with her natal chart, which is a lot of Cancer placements. And I've found myself, well, most importantly, I was tasked as being like end of life care for her because of just the sort of circumstances um, of everybody's lives at the time. And even like decades before it came to the end of her life, I knew that I would have to be there for that, either those years or those months or like who knows. I almost had this like sense of obligation, so I never even considered starting my own life in any kind of way because I always knew that I'd have to like move back to my home country, and that put like a big question mark in my own life, and maybe even the reason why I never wanted to get married or have kids, because this kind of thing was like looming over me. It was very subconscious, because if you would have asked me back then, why don't you want kids, I would have said like I just don't, like for personal reasons, because it's not something I see myself doing. It's not something I'm interested in. I don't have those instincts. Um, but it could have very well had something to do with knowing my fate, sort of. That would I would have to um, take care of her in some capacity. And I remember even when I was getting like my first big girl job, like straight out of college, where a company actually asked me to work for them, which would have been like a great excitement and a great privilege to anybody, I had this immediate sense of dread. Like, well, at that point, I was going to see my grandmother once a year, and because the tickets were so expensive, I would go for a whole month. And I kind of explained this to the potential employer, and they said, like, well, that's not a deal breaker. If you need that time off, we'll give you that time off. And that was just so unbelievable that they would do that. Now, they were Chinese, so I think they understood, like, the company was like three people who are from China living in the States and still with like very big family ties to China, obviously. So I think, and also a very small company that was not like corporate in any way. So having somebody else understand this familial obligation and give me that kind of perk that in American culture and society just seems like so extraordinary. Well, kudos to them. And I did end up taking that job. And I did have to do that huge move eventually. Um, but like understanding that that was like part of the connection, whether or not I wanted to, that was like a duty that had to be performed by somebody, and that somebody just happened to be me. And I very clearly see that connection with my grandmother because she had so much just horrific hardships in her life, and there was no running. There was nothing like that she could have done differently in retrospect. Now that I look at it, like she had a like marital problems, I suppose, like a lot of people do. And to say like, oh, she should have done this or that, or like her life fell together in such a way where she was really needed in all of those very difficult moments. She was very much needed, and I don't think anybody saw that. Um, because like as a kid, as a child, I definitely didn't see that. And there's so much to be said about that invisible labor and the fact that so many women are tasked with being caregivers to either other family members, their children, and how this takes these huge chunks out of their lives where they might even have to be working through those times, but emotionally or physically, they have this great responsibility to their family that often falls on their shoulders. I know that for myself, I never recovered after moving back to Ukraine, and then coming back here, I just could not find that same foothold that I had as a fresh student straight out of college. So, I wanted to make this episode about invisible labor that doesn't get acknowledged or talked about or celebrated, but how much it is the backbone of everything that happens in the world. How absolutely every action that's taken by anybody stems from being fed that day, stems from having clean clothes to put on, your very basic needs taken care of. And if you're not the one who's doing that um, yourself, there is somebody in the background who's doing that, whether it's labor that you outsource, like getting takeout meals or getting somebody else to clean your house. There is so much of this completely unremarkable labor that is undertaken either by you or by somebody else that makes the very existence possible. And that's something that is worth mentioning at least once in a while by somebody out there somewhere, because it gets really overlooked in what we consider to be pinnacles of success in modern society about careers um, and productivity and goal achievement. It is so rare to acknowledge those most basic things that have to be done on the daily basis to make sure that everything else is running smoothly. Right now, my son is running for student council, and we were brainstorming some ideas for what he could propose to do with this class, like activities that would kind of bring the school together and encourage like spirit of um, the school. And I suggested that he propose to dedicate a day to acknowledge all the workers who are not seen in the school. Like, there's a lot of stuff for teachers, there's donations collected for teachers. We're encouraged to give like gifts and cards during the holidays, but I thought it would be very important to include some kind of acknowledgement, and also just maybe like a brief overview of like, okay, this is what this person's day looks like. If they're a janitor, they come in at, way before everyone else does, or maybe they work overnights, or the lunch crew, they have to get there way before everyone else, and the kind of things they have to do to make sure that school is running smoothly. And he agreed. He thought that was a good idea to put that in to a speech, and he's going to present that today, actually. So I thought that was a fun way to, based on my own experience, like to know how sort of isolating and a thankless job it can be to just be making sure that things are running behind the scenes and how there are so many jobs where who employ all of these people, even in offices and big corporations, who are largely unacknowledged, but their job is very important because they're keeping like basic hygiene and supplies stocked and things like that. Also, when I'm looking at like groups of stay-at-home moms, the most frustration that I've encountered is with this same exact idea of not only having to be responsible for all the little things that nobody really thinks about, like just being able to open a drawer and find clean folded clothes in there, or having a snack after school, or being picked up from an activity and having like your whole life planned out for you and your library books ready to take back. This is exactly the kind of things that, because they're so in the background, nobody will thank you for it because it's just expected. It's expected that things will just be there for you to use or to have, and that it's only noticed when they're not being done. So it's like, oh, mom, did where's my lunch, or you forgot to pack me a sweater. And it's like, then the only acknowledgement is when the family doesn't have something, when it fails, and then like, oh, but you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't remember my book report, or whatever it is. So the only feedback that the primary kind of care person for the household gets is when they didn't do it right. So they only see that admonishment when they fail to do something, and that's like, feels like the only recognition, and that makes people so bitter. And I think the reason why I enjoy making this content as well as watching content just like this of other people cleaning their homes and other homes is because it serves as a record, and it makes things almost like real, because at the end of the day, it's so easy to be down on yourself because you feel like you didn't accomplish much, or your house is still in a state of chaos, and there's always things to be done, and kind of the futility and um, the amount of still unfinished tasks can get people down. And I think it's important to be able to see like just how much goes unnoticed, just how much time is spent in daily life just doing really mundane things. And I think that is that part of humanity where we wish we could somehow transcend, and we wish we didn't have to do this, or we wish we didn't have to take as much time, or it shouldn't take this much time, or why can't we be more efficient. And for that reason, it's nice to have this record of um, time wise, like just how long it takes to do very basic things around the house, and how like the video may be sped up, but that's, again, another testament of just the amount of time that such simple things take, and those simple things are very important to the function of not only your life but the people who depend on you also. At the end here, you get to see how the whole kitchen has come together now with the new appliance washer dryer combo, and how our other appliances had to get rearranged, the newly painted wall without the cabinets on there, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.